This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees, independently owned and operated since 1993. Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.
Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara.
Welcome once again to the Lake Superior Podcast. Frida, today, I think this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be curious about because anybody that's along the Lake Superior shoreline and even in other parts of the country recently have seen a real uptick in not only northern lights, but very brilliant and very active northern lights. And we've been able to get somebody together here that's going to help us maybe understand that a little bit.
You know, Walt, it's tough. This time of year, when all those hardwoods put on their party dresses, and I don't want to go to bed because it's just beautiful. Even if it's a cloudy, gray day, you get that thread of sunlight that just bursts open the forest. It's so beautiful. And then now, who wants to go to bed? I mean, everybody is reporting what in the world is going on? And
Right.
We've got the guy to tell us.
Yeah, we've been talking about a lot with northern lights. We're seeing a lot of them very actively along our locations along Lake Superior. But as I mentioned a moment ago, around the country now, people have been seeing them in areas it's not the normal. And to talk about it with us, an astrophysics graduate student from Michigan Technological University in Houghton, Michigan, is Ogetay Kayali. And welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Walt and Frida. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, we are happy to have you here because we were looking for ourselves out of curiosity about why it seems like there's been such an uptick in the northern lights. So let's kind of jump right in there. Are we right in saying it seems like it's been kicked up, and why are we seeing such a frequency?
Yeah. Suddenly everyone shares northern lights on their social media, right? That there seems to be something is not as usual, right? So, and there's a really good reason for that. So we're currently at what we call solar maximum. So every 11 years, the sun's magnetic field completely flips. So this is not what happens with the Earth, but it's the thing for every 11 years happening at sun. Mm-hmm. And during this time, it starts producing what we call, again, sunspots. So these are relatively colder regions over the sun, so they look dark. And these spots can generate large eruptions. Basically, these are high-energy particles. And when they hit the Earth's atmosphere, they create the northern lights. Mm. And because we are currently at the solar maximum, we get so many of them, and good ones, as you said, very really bright ones. So it's about this 11-year cycles. But there is actually another reason for that, too. And I think about 11 years ago, the previous solar cycle. Do you remember what kind of phone did you have?
No, I do not.
No. It barely took pictures, right?
Right.
So it wasn't even recording a full HD video, probably. But now everybody gets to see it and take pictures of it, share on social media. So we are exposed to lots of images. So we kind of think that since we are seeing a lot of them, now it's happening more frequently. It's actually, that's not seems to be the case. Of course, there are historical records that show the tremendous amount of storms. But I think there's a sociological fact here, too.
Okay, see, now that's interesting to me because I get that. We all have the phones with the cameras and they're much better and everything like that. But just, I mean, it seems to me like there's just been more days, more nights of it happening. I mean, I might be wrong, but it just seems like there's been a ramping up of that. But you're saying that this is very active solar activity that's really causing that.
Yeah, exactly. We are currently at solar maximum, so we are expecting lots of solar storms that hit the Earth and cause northern lights. That's pretty normal. Every 11 years this happens. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a bit less. And this year this solar cycle seems to be a pretty good one, but not as really unusual to spook about it or something like that.
So, Ogetay, I got some old eyes, but it is amazing when we're watching them. I'm not necessarily seeing all the colors, but the cameras on our iPhones do. Why is that?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Actually, the last one on October 10th, we went to McLean State Park to see it for the first time. And we got to see the colors too for this one. And I can tell the red one is much easier to see compared to the green one. And I think that depends on the person as well, because our eyes are not, everyone sees colors a bit differently. But also there's a technical reason for that, and that's about the sensitivity of our eyes. So there are two types of cells in our eyes. So that one is detecting the different colors, and the other one is detecting how bright the light is. So we can actually see that it's bright, but we can't able to tell what kind of color that is if it is not really bright enough. Okay, that is exactly the reason. It's actually the same for galaxies or nebulas as well. If you look through a telescope, you usually see them just like the auroras. That's why we kind of call them, they look cloudy. So you don't really get to see the color, but you realize it looks like a cloud, a grayish cloud. And that's the reason. So, but you can see the colors. If you really go to a dark place and the activity is so strong, it is totally possible to see the colors.
And Ogetay, what makes those colors? What makes that green and what makes that red and pink and purple even?
So these particles, high energy particles from sun, when they hit the Earth, they first hit the upper layers of the atmosphere. So in these layers, there are two major elements and molecules. So the nitrogen molecule and the oxygen, atomic oxygen, is mostly responsible from that. There are two major colors, right? People see green and red, but there's rarely purple and blue too. So these are kind of, sometimes you see an orange as well on your images, but that's mostly a blend of green and red. So instead of something really emitting orange light, it's green plus red, basically. And these are coming from the atoms or molecules. So when high energy particles hit these molecules, they get excited. That's a very good name in physics, by the way. They really get excited. Their energy increases. Okay. And when they relax back to their ground state, they emit light. And every atom and molecule has a certain emission. Some emits green, some red, even sometimes nitrogen do both, for example. So these are coming from the molecules and atoms on the upper atmosphere.
Now, I have to ask you this. You mentioned that this is every 11 years or so. If this is cyclical, how long maybe will this continue? Are we kind of seeing what there is to see this season? I mean, where are we with that?
So this is exactly the best time to see it. So because we are really at the maximum. So from now on, it's going to start decreasing. We're going to see less and less frequently. But we might keep seeing this for a while too, but don't expect to see as much as you are seeing now in 2030, for example. So if you're planning to see them, plan right now.
Okay. It's good advice. We're talking with Ogetay Kayali, who is a astrophysics graduate student at Michigan Tech University in Houghton. The question, Ogetay, is where are you from and how did you find your way to Michigan Tech in Houghton along the shores of Lake Superior to study this?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story because I'm literally from the other side of the world. So I'm from Turkey, and it's really interesting because I only applied to Michigan Tech.
Really?
So that's not normal because if you're trying to do a PhD, you apply as many universities as you can to increase your chances. But I wasn't intended to do a PhD at all. I was doing public outreach in Turkey. Like I was teaching kids science. We were doing science experiments, science projects, working with cities, the thousands of people, all kinds of stuff. And one day I saw an announcement on NASA's Astronomy Picture of the Day. That's what we call APOD. This is the platform, NASA's one of the most visited platforms, in fact. Every day since 1995, they publish one image with a one paragraph of explanation. So this has been going since 1995. And my advisor is the co-founder, and still the editor of this platform. And he was announcing that he's looking for a graduate student who can do research with him and work with APOD. And that sounded like a perfect fit to me. And I immediately emailed him. This is what I do. I would like to be in this team, and I would like to do a PhD with you. And here I am.
I love it. I just love it. What a great story. And there's the internet for you, so we can connect all the miles. But, I had an opportunity a few years back to go to the South Pole, and they were working on this giant telescope that I understand is operated by the University of Chicago. And I said, why a telescope at the South Pole? And they said, well, cold areas are the best place to really look into our skies. Do you find that Lake Superior is a good place also to look at the sky?
Well, in some ways, yes, because it is one of the biggest challenges that astronomers are having is the light pollution, unfortunately, because big cities produce lots of light, and this light goes to basically light up the atmosphere as well. We don't even get to see the stars in big cities these days. So that's a really big problem. So in places like Kivina, you can easily access the dark skies. I mean, I can just step outside of my apartment and see the Milky Way.
Right.
How cool is that?
Right, exactly.
This is a huge chance, because even if for a 20-minute drive gets you one of the possibly darkest skies in the United States. And anywhere else in the United States, to be able to access such a site, you have to drive like at least an hour.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity for anyone who wants to see sky here.
Well, one of the things here, and this is interesting for me, Ogetay, because I'm actually born and raised in the area from Chassell, which is just south of Houghton, where Michigan Tech is. Grew up on the lake, on Portage Lake, but grew up with Lake Superior. That when it was time for things like the Northern Lights, many of us would jump in the car, head to the beach somewhere, and do that. We do that here in Marquette, where we are recording this podcast, and a lot of people were doing it over the last couple of months here, last couple of weeks for sure, and they were grabbing those iPhones and they're grabbing their phones on their cameras and they're taking these pictures and they're coming out pretty well. But are there maybe some tips that you can share, a best way to maybe photograph the Northern Lights, get them as they look, at least try to make them look as good as they can?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I can also answer again why our iPhones can see it, but our eyes can't see it that well again as well. So because one of the reasons why still the professional cameras see better than our telephone cameras is that they have a bigger sensor. See it this way, Walt, Frida. So say that there's a rain outside and you want to collect some rainwater, okay? So are you going to take a glass with you or take a large bucket to collect all. So this is the same principle. You try to get something as large as you can so you can collect more light, just like you're collecting rain. So this is exactly the reason. Our eyes are really tiny. And the mobile cameras are also tiny, very tiny sensors, very tiny pixels. But the cameras still have quite large sensors. So they can collect more light in the same amount of time. So one of the tips that I can recommend is if you have a camera, first try to learn using it. Okay, so it's going to be better than the mobile cameras. But if you have a mobile camera, the technology advanced really, really surprisingly. Just we had the discussion. Even 11 years ago, we were not being able to record the HD video. But now we can do 4K aurora videos. I wouldn't imagine this, okay?
Right.
As an astrophotographer doing this for 15 years, I wouldn't imagine these days. So it's great to have our iPhones or mobile cameras. So the first tip is go to the darkest place you can, okay? The darkest sky is the biggest advantage. And if you can't, at least try to stay away from any kind of light source, like the street lights. This is going to make a huge difference. Okay?
Sure.
And the second tip is, this is the same for astrophotography as well. We do long exposures. Our eyes see like 24 FPS, frames per second. That means that we see 24 frames every second. So 1 divided by 24 seconds is our exposure length, basically. But for your cameras and phones, you can do it like 1 second, 5 seconds, 10, even 30-second exposures. This means that you are collecting light for 30 seconds, so it is bright. Okay. Try to crank up the ISO setting, which is the light sensitivity setting on your phones or cameras. Increase it as much as you can. If it looks too grainy, try decreasing a bit and try to compensate it by increasing the exposure time. But the biggest tip here probably is keep your camera and phone stationary, okay? Use a tripod if you can, because it's going to move if you just try to hold it in your hand. Since it is recording meanwhile, it's going to record the motion as well. So there will be some motion blur, like the car is moving slowly, that kind of thing. So try to keep it stationary as much as you can. And usually the phones and cameras have a delay setting, because when you hit the button, you kind of shake the camera as well. And we don't want that, because it keeps vibrating even if you don't really see it. It keeps vibrating. So there is a delay for 2-second option. Use that. So when you hit the button, it's going to start taking exposures 2 seconds after that. So it's going to become perfectly clean.
Very good tips.
Love those tips. Yeah.
How about times, maybe places? Because, it seems like sometimes, obviously we know it's under the cover of darkness, but sometimes we hear from people seeing them, 8 o'clock at night here later in the year, or sometimes then it's the middle of the night. Times that maybe, does that just vary?
So that varies because this is not really Earth-dependent thing. The sun is expelling lots of matter and it arrives at any time. Sometimes it's daytime and we don't get to see it. And in summers, that's exactly the reason why we don't see so many auroras. Actually, it's happening, but it's daytime. You don't get to see it. So in winter, the night times are longer, so you can see more of them. And there's one other thing, actually, that is the moon. So moon is a huge trouble, again, just like with the street lights. It's a very bright light source, and auroras, the northern lights, are quite faint. So if there is a full moon, you're not going to be able to see them as bright as like with the new moon. So that's another tip. So if you are not really eager to go see northern lights for every occasion, try to check the phase of the moon. If it is a new moon and there's a chance of seeing aurora, take that chance because it's going to be very bright.
Take that chance. I love it. Because, it seems like it's just a matter of being lucky.
It seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's why, I mean, you have to try it. The October 10th was supposed to be cloudy here. I had absolutely zero hopes of seeing it because I checked the cloud radar forecast. After 10 p.m., it was completely cloudy. But when we got there, because I knew that it was going to be a huge solar storm, and even if we can get to see between the clouds, you know, that's going to be amazing. So we drove there, and to our luck, it was just all clear, zero clouds. So you got to try it. You got to try it. So, okay, that's the goal.
I like
Keep
that.
passionate about it. You're going to see it, I promise.
We're talking with Ogetay Kayali today, who is an astrophysics graduate student at Michigan Tech University in Houghton for our Lake Superior podcast. Talking about Lake Superior, and of course, you're based in the Keweenaw. The Keweenaw National Historical Park is there, and Isle Royal is there. There's work on a dark sky park out of that. You mentioned that you ended up at Houghton because this sounded very interesting to you. You ended up at Michigan Tech. Now that you've been there for a while and you've had an opportunity to study this and some of the other things, what are your thoughts of being able to be by Lake Superior in a place like that? Because you're from Turkey, like you said, the other side of the planet. It is a different place, but what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I love it here because I'm a huge nature enthusiast. The very first thing that I started doing here was the wildlife photography. Got my camera, go out and take picture of what you can see because you don't have to go really far. Just walk outside, and every time you see something new. It's just an amazing nature here. That's why I love it here. Not just because of the dark skies, but the nature is just amazing. In fact, we have been to Pictures Rocks a few weeks ago. We took one of these cruise tours, actually, and it was just amazing. Every time you go somewhere, you see something new. So I can't really express my feelings. That's why I try to take photos of them, probably. But you got to really see it. You got to really experience it to understand what I'm trying to tell here.
That is wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Ogetay, what projects are you working on, like in the daytime then, at Michigan Tech?
Well, yeah. Well, me and my advisor work on a really strange phenomenon that involves faster than light motion. In fact, he recently published a book about it called Faster Than Light. It's like a puzzle book with like 300 questions. If you're interested in these kind of things like relativity, Einstein, faster than light stuff, all the possible questions are in that book. And that's what we study, basically, how things might go faster than light. And what happens if they do? That's what I study. And meantime, I do astrophotography as well.
Okay, yeah, all right. That's good.
I love it.
Go ahead.
Where can people find out more about you?
Well, if you Google my name, like if you Google K Ogetay, K like K-A-Y and Ogetay as O-G-E-T-A-Y, you're going to be able to find me because my name is extremely rare, even back in Turkey. So I only pop up. So that's going to be me.
All right. Well, we'll be sure to see if we can put some links on with this as well. But, you know, it's been really fascinating having you on here to talk to us today about this because the Northern Lights were what kind of did the interest of this conversation. But your firsthand description of the lake and what we have with Lake Superior and what we have in the region around Lake Superior and your perspective coming from, as you said, literally the other side of the planet. That's really, it's good to hear. To a certain extent, Frida and I, having been here for most of our lives, I don't take it for granted, but it is kind of where we are. So your perspective is really enjoyable to hear.
Yeah, thank you. That's how I really feel, by the way. I think that's how everyone feels. That's what I heard from others too.
I have to share, yesterday I was traveling from Skaney back to Big Bay with a friend on the AAA road. And I don't know if you've been on that road yet, but I know that's someplace you're going to wander. And just as we're coming to the corners where we kind of say the Anderson Road and Ford Road come together, before you get on that AAA that's going to go be paved pretty quickly, you're still in the dirt. I saw a big cow moose and one of her yearlings out on the road. And I mean, we were pretty close. We didn't want to get too close because no one wants to have to go to a body shop right now. But it made me think, is there an animal that you've yet to find in the wild in the Keweenaw that you're still hoping to capture with your camera?
Yeah, there are so many, actually. I usually do birding here, so there are a list of birds that I'm still yet to shoot. I mean, photograph, not kill them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So, but every year the list gets smaller and smaller, of course, but I haven't seen moose yet. So that's definitely on my list. I wanted to go to Isle Royale so bad this year, but it was a very busy summer for me. So I'm hoping for the next year, though. I want to see moose in real life.
Yeah.
Oh, we hope you do too. And when it comes to photographing moose versus birds, it's a whole lot easier. You know, a moose, a photographer actually told me that a moose is a perfect example of what God can do with spare parts. So you will see them, and I know you'll be looking through the lens, and you're going to remember that I said that, and you're going to get a chuckle. We hope that camera's on a tripod because you might get a full-on belly laugh when you see their beards. But compared to photographing birds, oh, my goodness. You have such amazing patience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you giving this insight into what you do and this information about Northern Lights and also getting out. We hope that you get a chance to go to Isle Royale National Park sometime. Of course, it's very popular, and not just for seeing moose, but just to have that up. You want to talk about probably getting away from light sources. You're going to do that there. But best of luck with everything you're doing with that. I hope you get some good shots as you are continuing to spend your time at Michigan Tech and in Houghton. And again, you know, if people want to find out a little bit more about some of the work, tell us again how to find you. What's the best way?
So the best way is just Google my name, Ogetay, Kayali. Google them, and you will find my social media links. And thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure for me.
Ogetay Kayali, who is an astrophysics graduate student at Michigan Tech University in Houghton. Some interesting insights, Frida, into the Northern Lights. Beyond that, but really, I mean, again, that's how we kind of started this, was to have the opportunity to talk about that, and he gave us some interesting information. Two things that got me. One is it's in a cycle, so every 11 years this happens, which is why it seems probably why it's a lot more. But then the other thing is our cameras are better, so we're seeing them more.
Yeah. You could really tell that Ogetay has experience as a teacher in science because he really helped me. This is a very complex subject, and he pulled it back down to you and I can understand it and put it together, and it really encourages me to get out. And maybe I need to dust off that other camera too. You know, we can still.
I get that. The quote unquote real camera, right? You know, it gets a better image, a bigger image. It captures more stuff, and it's really been interesting having him on. And you know, as we're out there trying to see the Northern Lights and everything like that, it's like you do see them a certain way when you see them, you experience them. And for a lot of people, it's very moving, and it can be very heartwarming and teach you about maybe our places in the big picture and everything like that. But really, you know, he seems to have really tapped into it in a great way.
And to be patient.
Yes.
You know, to get out there, trust your chances. Like he said on October 10th, everybody thought, nah, it's not going to be very good, even though there was a solar storm happening. But you go ahead and just take the chance, get out there. I mean, yeah, we all need our sleep, but I bet you're going to sleep better. Even if you have to spend a couple of hours, you know, waiting on that blanket, you know, looking up at the sky or with a buddy. And, you know, what's to say you might want to put some good bourbon in there, whatever it might be. But
it'll help you see something. Anyway, you know, again, if there is a subject, a topic that comes up as you're spending time or you're looking into the wonderful, great Lake Superior area and all the national parks, let us know. Find us through the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, and they'll get some topics to us because we always want to hear from you. We'd also like to know where you are listening to the podcast at. Where are you? Because as we just talked with Ogetay, he's from Turkey, literally the other side of the planet. He's doing stuff in loving Lake Superior in the Keweenaw Peninsula. You may very well they'll be doing the same thing. We want to hear from you about that.
I would love to find out if we have any listeners in Turkey.
I bet you we will now.
I bet
pretty much
so.
Well, that's pretty much going to do it here for this edition of the Lake Superior podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
I'm Frida Waara. Thanks for listening. The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. national park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Waara.
And I'm Walt Lindala. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.